Should I go to law school? That is a question that a lot of law students and practicing attorneys get from people who are thinking about going to law school. And when I tell you that my number one pet peeve always has been and always will be when practicing attorneys respond, no, don't go, like they respond in such a negative and unhelpful way because that's what it is. It's unhelpful. So here is my response to people who are thinking of going to law school and they want help in figuring out whether it's a good move for them. I usually separate this discernment process into like two questions. The first one, why? What is your why for going? And two, what are your non-negotiables for going? And I will explain that one further. But to start off with the first one, which is arguably the most important, why do you want to go to law school? People have different responses on this, right? I know for me, law school had always been an option in my mind. I didn't take it seriously until I had been working for 2 years as a leasing agent and wasn't super happy in that position just because it's not what I wanted to be doing long term. And so I started to think more about law school. COVID happened. I had more time to study for the LSAT since I wasn't commuting twice a day. And so that's kind of what pushed me to actually pursue it. My reasons for pursuing law school also had a lot to do with the fact that I love reading, I love writing, I'm good at those things, I enjoy editing and problem solving, all of which you need in law school and in the practice of law. That was pretty much my, I guess, discernment process for my why. Why do I want to go to law school? In one sentence, it's because being a lawyer utilizes the skills that I most enjoy using. But if you also need a little help and direction on figuring out your why, I would start with these questions. Do you enjoy reading and writing and problem solving and editing? Because you'll be doing a lot of that in law school and in practice. Are you open to opportunities for oral advocacy, so public speaking? And this isn't to say that lawyers do this all the time, but you will come across it in law school. And for those of you who actually do enjoy it, there are positions where you are doing that more often than other lawyers. Are you okay with the prospect of being in a position where it's not as exciting as TV and Hollywood makes it out to be? Like, you're not gonna be Harvey what's-his-face from Suits. There is a lot of sitting and reading and writing, and there is conversation with clients and talking to them, but being a lawyer is largely analytical. So are you going into it because you want an exciting career, or are you wanting to go into it because it utilizes skill sets that you have and you enjoy using? I think other good questions to consider for your why is, are you wanting to change the world? Which I personally think that's a good, hope to have, a goal to have. But I also would follow that up with, are you willing to put in the time and work and patience it will take to get to a point where you can do that? And I'm one of those people where I personally believe that every single one of us is changing the world and how we conduct ourselves. It's like, kind of going off of the butterfly effect, where every small decision, right, does have an effect later on in the large scheme of human history. We may not see that immediately when we make a decision, but it does have an effect. So I don't scoff at people who say that they want to go to law school because they want to help people or they want to change the world. I think that those are good and admirable qualities that you should pursue. But just know that it will take time and you have to learn to walk before you can run. And so there might be a lot of years where you're working, you're learning how to walk before you can run. So I would keep that in mind. And in the process of learning how to walk, are you okay with the environment of being a lawyer, the actual day-to-day tasks of being a lawyer. And this is critical because this is why I encourage people who are thinking of going to law school or who want to be a lawyer, go and shadow lawyers. This is why you start networking as soon as you think that you want to be one, because you need to know what the day-to-day is actually like. I wish that I had done more of this across different types of lawyer roles before going to law school, just for my own understanding of the industry and just of different jobs that are possible for people with a law degree. If you're someone where maybe that's not your answer, you don't have, these big grandiose dreams of necessarily changing the world, but you want stability and security, or you want money, I don't think that those are inherently bad answers, so long as you're not sacrificing values and ethics and morals for those things. But just know that no job is going to be 100% secure. I mean, we've seen that play out these past few months with the corporate world and tech and entertainment. Just because you go and work for a large company, a 9-to-5 corporate role that most people would chalk up to being a safe role, they're not necessarily safe. Sometimes they can be as risky as starting your own business, where, the stakes are higher with starting a new business versus going and working for one that's been in business for longer, just statistically speaking. But I say that just so people are aware that no one role is going to guarantee you lasting security and income, which is why it's important that your why also reflects work that you want to do. Don't just do it for the paycheck, because the paycheck is not always promised, and the amount that you're wanting you may not achieve until years into practice. And maybe you get it right out of law school. There are some people, like in big law or big corporate jobs, where they are getting a very large paycheck, but their day-to-day usually entails a lot more work, longer work hours. You have little to no autonomy over your schedule. And I'm not speaking from experience on that, because that's not the route that I took, but people that I know or that I've listened to, that has been their experience. And that is historically the experience that people in those roles have. I think the best question you can ask yourself to determine your why and whether law school is a good move for you is, the work that you want to do, does it involve the majority of tasks that lawyers do day to day? Or is there a role that you want or a position you want where being a lawyer and having that experience is either a prerequisite or will help you achieve that sooner? Some people may not want to do the day-to-day tasks of being a lawyer, and that's okay, but they want the experience so that way the role that they're aiming for, they can lean back on that experience that they cultivated first. I think that's perfectly reasonable. You don't have to go to law school thinking, oh, I want to sit at a computer for 8 hours a day or more, 12 hours a day, depending on where you work, and just reading things. Like, there's a lot of people where that's not ideal, and that's fine. But the role or the lifestyle that they want, that might be a prerequisite for getting there. If that's you, that's great. I mean, that's the clarity you need to make an informed decision like this. So that's part one. I would think about your why, the work you want to do, what brings meaning to your life. What are your long-term career goals? What roles are you working towards? All of those are really important for just saying yes or no, am I going to go to law school? So that's where I would start. Part two is for people who have decided that law school is your next best step. I think a critical part in making that decision is determining what your non-negotiables are. And this is what I did whenever I finally said, yes, I'm going to do this. For me, those non-negotiables were, I'm not going to law school unless I have a scholarship that will cover the majority of my tuition. And that's the only way that I'm going to go. If I can't get that, then I'm just going to put it off until I can make it happen, or I'm just not going to go. Well, my approach was, I took the LSAT and I studied, I did the best that I could, and I just looked at the score that I was given, and based on that score, I looked at my options. and I just went for it. I applied to the school where my LSAT score was on the higher end of applicants that apply there. That was my approach. I was more concerned about the finances of it, primarily because I have dug myself into really big student debt from my undergrad because I went out of state, and me being an 18-year-old, I didn't think of all the personal financing rules that I now know before making that decision, but that's another video for another day. For you, finances may not be the number one non-negotiable, and that is totally okay. Maybe you want that big law life, that big corporate job life, and you want to work for a company or at a firm where they usually only hire from certain schools. I would consider that, and I would factor that into your plan. You'll have to factor those details into your plan because you're going to need an LSAT score that gets you in the running for getting into those schools. And so knowing that up front, that that is what you want, it will only help you, and it will help you sit down and plan each step of the process. Non-negotiables, again, they're going to look different for everyone. For some people, geography is going to play a big role in that. That was probably the second detail for me. I wanted to be able to stay close to home so that way I could live at home while I go to law school to cut down on expenses for rent. And so I factored that into my plan. But that's not necessarily doable for everyone. Again, totally okay. This is why you sit down and you look at what are my non-negotiables, because once you have that list, you can go down all the list of law schools that are in the US or abroad, if that's what you want to do. Just go through and process of elimination, like which ones are open to me, knowing that these are my non-negotiables. So that is my advice that I give to any person who comes up to me interested in going to law school. What is your why? Why do you want to go? What entices you to this career and this work? And then from there, creating your list of non-negotiables so you can come up with a plan for making that why and that goal happen. For my fellow attorneys out there who are giving advice to people, or perhaps you have people coming up to you asking these questions, I would emphatically encourage you to not just respond, no, don't go. Worst decision of my life. Don't say that. It's not helpful. Do I think that we should be honest and about our experiences and how challenging law school and the practice of law can be? Absolutely. It is very challenging. At times it can be boring. At times it is sitting there and reading and writing and editing all day, every day. Especially in law school. I mean, I'm just now beginning my practice of law, so I can't speak, 110% like this is exactly how it will be. But at the same time, like, no one really can, because there are so many different legal roles, so many different things you can do with a law degree, right? I would just implore other attorneys to not shoot down someone because they're thinking about taking a similar path to you. Just because it didn't work out for you, or you wish that you hadn't taken this path, doesn't mean that you have to project that negativity and that regret onto other people. Start off by asking why. What interests you about this? Have you talked to other lawyers? Have you shadowed them? Have you worked in the legal industry in some shape or form? Did you grow up with lawyers? And just like start off with questions, because that's honestly key to having a good conversation, point blank, period. Start off with questions, be curious, talk to the person, engage with them. Don't just shoot them down because you don't agree or because you think that they're making a mistake. You may not know them. So start with questions, ask them why, and then be honest about your experience. Say, it didn't work out for me, or I'm not happy because of these things, but that may not be the case for you. Leave it at that, because that's really all they need to know. Of course, helping them determine what their non-negotiables may be. Be honest about the financial burden that law school can bring for people. I absolutely think people should know about that before signing up for law school. But there's a way to share that information without shooting them down and not giving them those details. those are my thoughts on that. If that's something that you want to talk about further, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with new people. Give me a follow on my social media accounts if you want to learn more and hear more. Next time, my plan is to talk more about intellectual property, why I went into this, and why it is critical for entrepreneurs to be worried about their intellectual property or to plan for it. Not necessarily to be worried, but just to plan for it.